I thought about that afterwards, prior to, I think it was prior to 2005, the feds passed the emergency I just think it's, for me, a criminal's gonna say, look for the steady blue light, shoot the policeman, and then you're on the street. Or do I get speak directly? What do you think? Okay.
The one 70.
I do everything after except the last time. With the iPad. They go, you have the phone. It's going to be easier to do.
Clinically, it is 14 indications. And so, but there's a trial. That's a part of the problem. So, yeah, that's
This one is fun.
Good morning. If I could have everyone take their seats, I'd like to call the Senate Educational Health Committee to order. And before we begin, I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Senator Sadler. Senator Lucas. Here. Senator Howell. Here. Senator Lott. Here. Senator Barker. Senator Black. Here. Senator Carrico. Here. Senator Peterson. Here. Senator Cosgrove. Here. Senator Lewis. Senator Donovan. Here. Senator Chase. Here. Senator Sugarline.
Yes.
Senator Peake.
Here.
Senator Newman. You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Correct. A couple of housekeeping items. First off, we're delighted to welcome a new member to our committee, and that's Senator Mark Peake from Lynchburg. Mark, if you don't mind introducing yourself, where you represent, and then we'll place you on the subcommittees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mark Peake. I am from Lynchburg. I represent the 22nd Senate District. We have 9 localities from Amherst to Lynchburg on through Appomattox, Buckingham, Cumberland, Louisa, Prince Edward, Fluhan, and Gooseman. And it's a pleasure to be here sitting here.
Mark's going to do a great job, and as I said on the floor, he's going to raise the average like the Lynchburg delegation up quite a bit. A couple of items that we probably will take up at closer to the end of the session. There may be some people here to talk about those bills. One of them is Senator Favola's bill. Your bill 877 will take place after we hear from the Secretary. Also, 2 bills from Senator Donovan, which would be 1026 and 1243 will be taken up after we hear from the Secretary. The order of the day would be that we will take up bills from non-members until about 9:30. And at 9:30, the Secretary has asked us to allow him about 30 minutes. It doesn't necessarily have to take 30 minutes, but about 30 minutes to talk to us about some of the mental health items. He wanted to give us a level set on that. I think it will be informative, and I think we all need to hear it. I think he may be giving some of the same information to those of us that are on HHR in finance. There are a couple of items. I don't know if Senator DeStaff is here. You are. The motion that I'm hopeful that will be made is that we will take your bills, which include Senate Bill 985, Senate Bill 986, Senate Bill 987, also Senator Sturban's bills, which include Senate Bill 1087 and 1088. All of those dealing with public education tuition. And also, Senator Peterson, yours is 1379, that we are going to send those up to finance. They've asked for them, and we're
today on those three bills. I have somebody who wanted to speak on those, and he's unable to get here today.
Senator Steph, I appreciate that. What we do is we're going to have a hearing upstairs, so there's going to be plenty of time to have a discussion. But I just want to mention just quickly what your three bills do. They're similar, but they have a little difference.
Yes, sir, they are. And Senate Bill 986 basically ties tuition increases to the workers' wage index. Senate Bill 987 ties in-state tuition increases to the median household income increases for the state. And Senate Bill 985 ties tuition increases to no more than the consumer price index.
Did you also discuss what 955 does?
I did not. I was going to address that when it's my turn to come up, but I'd be happy to do it now if you'd like.
That one is going to go upstairs as well. So why don't you tell us what that one does as well?
Okay, Senate Bill 955 renames the Board of Visitors to the Board of Trustees. And really, Board of Trustees focuses more on the duties of the Board of Visitors or the Board of Trustees are to the Commonwealth and to the citizens before they are to the university. As a Board of Visitors, the name Board of Visitors seems like you're just there to visit and not really as like a Board of Directors where you're truly there as a trustee representing the Commonwealth and the citizens of the Commonwealth and have a fiscal duty and responsibility to the Commonwealth. So I feel, and I believe there's a couple of other bills similar to this, that the Board of Trustees is more appropriate for our colleges than the Board of Visitors.
You worked really hard on this and certainly developed a number of opportunities for improvement to all of us over the last year or so. We're grateful for that. We do think that this year that we need to take a good look. We've talked already upstairs, not to prejudge what will happen up there, about the desire to take a very strong look at it and be very helpful and educated. So thank you for that. With that, Senator Sterling, if you
Mr. Chair, just a point of order. We have a higher education subcommittee. Is there any reason why we wouldn't have it heard there?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of why we're around, isn't it?
Well, the ones that are related to higher education, the subcommittee chair has requested, as had the Senate Finance Committee, to send those bills upstairs. So he, and he'll be here soon, and the guys upstairs have requested them. And since they are some about policy, but mostly about money, that's what we decided to send.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The two bills that I had brought this year on higher ed tuition are bills that this committee heard last year. The first bill, Senate Bill 1087, is a bill to cap increases in higher ed tuition rates at 2 times the rate of inflation. So, we tend to think of rate of inflation as what we hoped average Virginians' paychecks would increase by per year. This attempts to keep higher ed tuition reasonable by capping it at 2 times the rate of inflation. And in years when colleges and universities need to increase tuition by more than that rate for a large project, they can come to the General Assembly for approval. So it allows for a layer of accountability and transparency there. The second bill, Senate Bill 1088, another bill that this committee heard last year. And this would, it's really a truth in tuition bill. And so when a in-state Virginia student enters a Virginia public college or university, the college or university would provide the student and their family with a fee schedule of what their tuition would be over the coming 4 years, a not to exceed amount, so that a student and their family can better plan what tuition may increase by over that 4-year period.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Sassel.
Senator Sterling, it's been the policy here that when these bills affect the financial operation of these colleges, they go immediately to Senate Finance.
Certainly, yeah. And I appreciate the opportunity to briefly describe them this morning, and happy to present them to finance.
So let me just mention to you, I think that I've also received a lot of good information about the rate of increase, and also Senate Finance has been looking at the amount of funds that's going to assist students. And I think this just fits in perfectly with what really needs to be reviewed. So thank you for presenting those two bills to us. And then Senator Peterson, if you want to just tell us what.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I had Senate Bill 1379, which doesn't specifically deal with tuition, but it does say that where a college is holding an operating fund, which is more than 150% in the actual operating cost, in other words, they're running a surplus, that they would return that money back to the students through reduced tuition over the next 5 years. So in other words, you're capped how much of a surplus you can keep in terms of cash, and once you exceed that, you either have costs to meet it or you return the money to the students.
So, Senator Peterson, thank you also. I know that I've received additional information about this, which is very helpful. And I want you to know that we will have a hearing, so Senator DeSapp, if you want to have your individuals bring those individuals up there, we will have a hearing up there at Senator Sturtevant and also to Senator Peterson, so we'll go through that process. I also want the committee to know, in advance of a motion on the money side, is that there are a number of bills that relate to other items of reform. So when you have some of those bills, posting information on the internet, increases, that type of thing, that don't affect finances, those are going to be items that Senator Saxton's subcommittee will hear, and I'm hopeful that on a number of those, that we will act favorably on some of those from this subcommittee. So is there a motion that we refer Senate Bill 955, 985, 986, 987, 1087, 1088, and 1379 to the Committee on Finance. There's a motion and a second that those bills be referred to Finance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no. And those bills are referred to Finance. Okay. Very good. Thank you. And also, there are a couple of bills that we need to go by for the day on, and they include Senate Bills 1222, which is a Senator Barker requested that bill go by for the day, and also Senate Bill 1247, who is Senator Stewart's private well bill, go by for the day, and without objection, those two bills will go by for the day. The last item of housekeeping is Senator Peake, who we welcomed earlier. I'd like to announce that Senator Peake will go on the Public Education Subcommittee and also on the Health Professions Subcommittee. And if your chairs would work with him on the time so that it would be very helpful. With that, we will turn our attention to the non-committee members' bills, and first up on the sign-up sheet is Senator Chafin, who has two bills. 1178 is actually a good place to begin. Welcome, Senator Chafin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. 1178 is...
Senator Chafin, were your bills in the subcommittee?
They were in subcommittee. There are amendments.
Let's do this then. Because it may clear out a number of the people who are waiting for us. Let's go through those subcommittees. I think you'll be taken care of pretty quick on that. So if we could take up the Health Professions Subcommittee report. Who's going to give that today? Dave, will you give that today? Dave, you can give your report, please.
Do you have any preference, Mr. Chair, in the order in which we go?
No, sir, I'll leave that completely up to you.
All right, we're going to go chronologically then. The first one was Senate Bill 1027, Senator Morrison.
It dealt with the permitting of pharmaceutical processes to manufacture cannabis oil, which was addressing the policy decision that the Commonwealth made on previous General Assemblies. It was to allow for manufacture certain facilities, and we had an emergency clause on this bill, and it was recommended to report on a 5 vote.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second that this bill be reported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No.
Stanley. And this essentially has to do with how many years of residency, or how many years you have to take if you have a medical degree from a foreign institution. It would reduce it from 2 years to 1 year, just like students from American medical schools. And we believe that this will help increase access, and we recommend the report on a 5-year vote.
So there's a motion and a second that the bill be reported. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no. The bill is reported. Senator Superline.
Senate Bill 1178 was Senator Jenkins' bill, and there's an amendment needs to be reached. I don't know if you'd like to hear him speak to it. In committee, an amendment was offered to be rejected, but I think he and the Met decided to work something out.
Okay, so you rejected the committee amendment, but Senator, would you like us to consider the amendment? Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Actually, we worked with the Medical Society of Virginia and Scott Johnson and appreciate their efforts. And what was originally offered was a 3-year sunset. We agreed to a 5-year sunset for this bill, for 11A.
Why don't you just report it just so we hear it, and then Senator Carrico would.
Excuse me, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just new line 15, that the provisions of this act shall expire on July 1, 2022.
Okay, everybody in agreement with that amendment? There's a motion and a second that the committee amendment be agreed to. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no. Committee amendment is agreed to. So David?
And Mr. Chairman, we had recommended a report on a 5-0 without that amendment, and I think we would all still find it very agreeable.
Yes.
We have discussed an additional amendment to this bill that we have language for here now. My bad.
Okay. Very good. So with that, the bill's been amended, and the motion is that Senate Bill 1178 be reported. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no. And the amendment issuing the bill is reported. Next up is 1180. Senator Superline.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that was another bill brought by Senator Chapin, and we recommended a 5-0 vote to report it with a line amendment. And what this bill does is it directs the Board of Industry and Medicine without regulations for the prescribing of opioids and other medicines, and it's also contains an emergency clause.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's 1180 that has the sunset. Yes, 1180, not
I'll help us
1170.
out with that, if you don't mind.
The sunset in subcommittee was discussed for 1178, Mr. Senator.
I stand corrected.
Okay, so Tom often corrects me, trust me. Tom, would you mind reporting the amendment that we do have for 1080?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On line 47, it's the third enactment, that the prescription monitoring program at the Department of Health Professions shall annually provide a report to the Joint Commission on Healthcare on the prescribing of opioids in the Commonwealth that includes data on reporting of unusual patterns of prescribing or dispensing of a covered substance by an individual prescriber or dispenser, or on potential misuse of a covered substance by a recipient pursuant to section 54.1-2523.1.
We've heard the amendment, and there's a motion and second that we adopt the amendment on 1180. All those in favor say aye. Those no, the amendment is agreed to. There's a motion that the bill be reported as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no. And Senate Bill 1180 is reported. Thank you. Senator Superline.
Mr. Chairman, the remainder of the legislation in the subcommittee report was patroned by co-chair Senator Donovan, and each one of them was recommended for a report. And unanimous vote of everyone present. I'm going to turn it over to her so she can present those.
Okay, there's an amendment here as well. Tom, do you mind reporting the amendment on Senate Bill 1230?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, page 6, line 339, after group, insert of interested stakeholders, including the Medical Society of Virginia, the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association, and the Virginia Dental Association.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may add to that, one additional, entity, and that would be Virginia Departments. I'd like to be represented on that committee as well.
So we'll just take that as an amendment to the amendment, and does everyone understand? All right, there's an amendment before us which includes the portion from Senator Donovan. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Those no. The amendment's agreed to. The motion on the bill as amended. There'll be a motion and a second that the bill be reported as amended. All those in favor say aye. Those no. The bill is reported. Senator Sudoline.
The next bill, Senate Bill 1242, was also one of Senator Evans' bills. She would like to report that we recommended it be reported, and I believe there's amendments first to come from Congress.
Right. Tom, you're not reporting the subcommittee amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These actually weren't heard in subcommittee, but got them afterward. On page 3, line 142, after the department, insert of health. Also on page 3 on line 46, after the word advance, strike written. And then also on page 3, excuse me, on line 149, after the department, insert of health.
Okay. Senator Donovan, since they weren't yet heard in subcommittee, why don't you tell us what those amendments do, and then we'll
I think it just clear the language in the bill, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill that sets up training programs to assist, and allows the coach to recognize that other than lawyers can assist people in developing advanced strategies, which is a really important part of, what we need to do to make sure people have a voice in the learning careers.
All right, there's a motion to second that the amendments to 1242 be adopted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those no, those amendments are adopted. Motion. And a second on the bill, as amended. All those in favor say aye. No, those say no. The bill is reported. Okay, next up, Senator Sudoline, 1403.
Yes, Senate Bill 1403 was also from Associated Senator. It directs the Board of Pharmacy to initiate action to deschedule or reschedule cannabinoid or any other product containing cannabis oil that may be approved as prescription medication by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. This is pretty similar to what we did with the actual oils from cannabis that are found in synthetic form. And this would be, once the FDA allows it, we would then be ready as a Commonwealth to continue down the policy decision that was made by the previous General Assembly as well. And we recommended that on a 4-0 vote of all those present.
Move the substitute.
All right, there's a motion and a second that the substitute be adopted. All those in favor say
peer support teams unless such communication is specifically included under the privilege. Senator Carrico made a very compelling argument that especially public safety members need to have this type of peer support team, especially when critical incidents happen. And if I could speak briefly, there was a unanimous recommendation to report the full committee.
Thank you, Senator Carrico. I think that this bill, if we decide to report it, also needs to be reported and referred to the courts. Is that your understanding?
That's correct, and it is given the public safety sector who has been under quite a bit of attacks through the years, the opportunity to have a clinical psychologist trained peer supporters to intervene and to help in situations of critical incidents, shootings and so forth that happen within the department. But it does have to go before vetting that goes to the criteria for this policy.
Are there any questions about the bill? If not, there is a motion and a second that the bill be reported and referred to the Committee on Courts. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no. And the bill is reported and referred to courts. Senator Lola, I know you're here. I just want to make sure I don't make you wait. I think you only have, just one bill.
No, I have two. Tony 877.
That's the one that's going to wait till after. Okay.
Right, but I do have 894 that was on the docket. At least that's what we were notified
Right.
about.
So we can then take up your bill, and we'll take up Senator Deeds' bill, and then we will hold your other bill for a moment. Senator Deeds, is that okay with you?
Senator Deeds was here before me, but
You'd like to yield to Senator
do
Deeds?
okay, very quickly, there is an amendment in the nature of a substitute, so I hope you have that before you.
Okay, there's a motion, second, that the substitute be agreed to. All those in favor say aye. Those no, and substitute is adopted. Senator Holman.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, what this bill does is it would ensure that the Department of Behavioral Health Services actually refers all incidents as defined in regulation to the Disability Law Center, which is the Commonwealth's designated protection and advocacy group. And the definition of critical incidents is, has the regulation or the statute requires, quote, it's serious bodily injury or loss of consciousness requiring medical treatment. I just want to add that this is not an additional reporting requirement on the programs or the facilities. Those programs and facilities are already reporting to the Department of Behavioral Health. What this does is just ask that the Department of Behavioral Health actually share all of the incident reports that fall under that definition with, it's the Disability Law Center has the designated Commonwealth advocacy system. So there's not additional burden, as I just explained. It's just ensuring that the proper incidents are referred. There is, the director of the Disability Law Center is here, and we worked with the department to ensure that we crafted this correctly, and as far as I know, the department is not opposed to this.
Okay, so other questions for Senator Falola? Senator Falola, this disability group, they're not part of the Commonwealth anymore, is that correct? Or what? How does that group stand? I'm not sure if I know exactly where you stand, whether you're part of the Commonwealth anymore.
Good morning, Senator. We are not a state agency. My name is Colleen Miller. I'm the executive director of the agency. We're not a state agency. We are a creature of state government because this legislature did designate us as the protection and advocacy system.
Thank you for the reminder. Senator Kerrigan.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm just curious as to what brought this forward. Is there a large number of deaths that are occurring that the Advocacy Center is being aware of, but made aware of, that's not being reported? Or?
Mr. Chairman, no, Senator, it's not a specific occurrence. It's simply that services for people with disabilities are now happening more in the community than in facilities. And the Disability Law Center receives these reports and has received these reports for probably 15 years from the facilities. But as people are moving out of facilities and receiving services in the community, it's our belief that they're entitled to the same level of oversight and support.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up. So with the DOJ report that required the closing of training centers that are moving these individuals out into group homes or facilities outside of that, you're saying that they don't have the same reporting requirement as that facility had?
That's exactly, Mr. Chairman, yes, Senator, that's exactly right.
Senator Black.
Sure. Is it, am I correct that there have been a couple of the people who were moved out of the Children Virginia Training Center who have since died in these dispersed facilities?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I don't have that information. We don't currently receive those reports in the community.
And that would, Mr. Chairman, that would be sort of solved by this particular position.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I think there are also those who have been moved out of other facilities that have not made it quite okay. I think everyone now understands the bill. Is there a motion on the bill, or is anyone here to speak in support or in opposition to the bill? Hearing none, is a motion to report the bill? There's a motion to second that this bill be reported. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no, the bill is reported. Senator Corolla, thank you for coming. We'll look forward to getting to your next bill.
Thank you very much.
Senator Deeds, see Senator Corolla was right. You were first. I apologize to you. That's quite all right. You got Senate Bill 1064.
1064, after a firefighter in Fairfax County lost her life by suicide, the firefighters, professional firefighters, decided to be a little proactive. This bill comes from the professional firefighters. It requires the Department of Behavioral Health to develop programs and administer it that will allow them to be trained on mental health awareness. It requires the department to set up a process whereby a program not created by the department can be certified as a proper training mechanism, and it requires firefighters to go through this course at least once every 2 years. I've got the bill right now doesn't apply to volunteer firefighters, but I think Tom has amendments that will make sure every firefighter has the opportunity to go through this program.
I'm reporting the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Deeds, on page 4, line 240, after all firefighters strike other than volunteer firefighters is defined in section 2742.
Okay, is there a motion on the amendments? There's a motion and a second that the amendments be agreed to. All those in favor say aye. Those no, and the amendments are agreed to. Senator Deeds, any motion? Yes, Senator Kerrigan.
I think this is similar to what I'm doing in law enforcement, and I'm just curious as to why this one wouldn't end up in course also for the day.
This bill has been requested by finance. It may be that they draft it first. I'll let you guys work through it. You guys work.
I was just looking at the council, the difference between the two and why.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Kerrigan, your bill was an expansion of privileged communication.
Okay. it usually doesn't have a fiscal impact, but when we create the program, I think there's an opportunity that it could come back on the state if we create it, so that's why it's gonna be looked at.
We didn't get an explanation for why, but they requested, so it's okay, we will just send it out. Are there other questions? Yes, Senator Castro.
Senator, is this going to be one more thing that the local law enforcement and firefighters have to do? It's going to take more time. It's going to be an impact on communities as far as.
It probably will, but this is unusual in that it's been requested by the people that are going to be regulated, or are going to have to go through it. It's been requested by the firefighters, so this isn't something that a bunch of politicians sitting in the room decided to do. This is something that the firefighters brought in.
Senator Pete.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So funding, you think, is already in place, and if it goes to finance, are they going to make sure this isn't, in essence, not a funded mandate?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think that's exactly what finance will do. And it seems to me that the programs are already in place, that they can figure out how to do this. But if they can't, finance isn't going to let us go forward with it.
So, Senator Pete, this applies to volunteer firefighters as well.
The amendment, yes.
All right, so just to be clear, Senator Pete, just so we all know, we will have to look at, I can't tell you that when it comes out of finance, that it will not be a mandate on the volunteer fire departments in your districts to make sure we're clear on that. Senator Pete,
We will have a chance to vote on it, Mr. Chairman, we will have a chance to vote on it if it comes out of finance.
that's all right.
But, Mr. Chair, I'd say one other thing, that we mandate a lot of training for these volunteer groups, and we really don't have any way to make sure that they're doing it. And the reality is that a lot of training, well-intentioned, that we do require doesn't get done in some of these communities.
I understand. I think that what we're hearing, you probably heard some of this too, is not about the urgency of this bill, it's that the volunteer fire departments in the rural areas, as you know, are just seeing a strong decrease in their membership. We can't get the young people and we can't keep the older guys. And one of the things they're saying is the weight is what's
And Mr. Chair, if this comes out of finance without that amendment, without excluding volunteer, I would certainly vote that.
All right, with that, with the amendments, is there a motion on the bill to report and refer to finance? Motion and second that the bill be reported and referred to finance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no, and the bill is reported.
Thank you.
Senator Hughes, thanks for coming by. Okay. I think except for Senator Bowl, which we taken up after we hear briefly from the secretary, those are the ones that are not on the committee. So what we can do from there is if we can begin with some of these the committee members' reports. Senator Donovan, do you mind taking up your bills that did not go to subcommittee, which would include 1024, 1026, and 1026? Senator Donovan, before you begin, is there a bill that you were hoping that would go by your bills, or we work through that?
No, sir.
All right, Senator Donovan.
It's not impossible, but I don't think so. So Senate Bill 1024 is a bill that really addresses expanding who can, and there is an amendment for this, Tom, is that correct?
Yes, substitute.
Substitute, I'm sorry, I'll let you, they're distributing the substitute now.
All right, so there's a substitute before us. There's a motion and second that the substitute be agreed to. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no, and the substitute is agreed to. Senator Donovan.
So, Mr. Chairman, this really stems from the realization that there have been deaths and really horrible circumstances that have happened in the Commonwealth that have maybe been associated with drivers that have some challenges with sight. And we want, as we expand the workforce in healthcare in Virginia, we need to make sure that all healthcare providers feel that they are protected and reporting somebody that maybe should not have their license. So the objective of this bill is really to expand the licensees that can report with immunity, that somebody may not need to have their license. And there's also one language change because we're expanding the providers on line 18. Instead of saying physician-patient, it would read practitioner-patient. And that's really the essence of this bill.
Other questions, Senator Donovan?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Peterson.
Senator, under what circumstances would a psychologist be reported to the DMV that someone's unable to drive a car?
Well, in all likelihood, that psychologist may have revealed to them in the course of a conversation with the patient may have revealed that they have a problem that they haven't had diagnosed or worked up. And, I mean, that is a safety issue, and the psychologist may feel the need to report that.
Further question?
Senator Peterson.
I mean, I guess all of us, I mean, I'm an attorney, I'm also a parent. I've seen my teenager hit a tree as a driving a car. I mean, there's all sorts of situations where we should probably call DMV and have a license pulled or at least examined. I just don't see why a psychologist or a physical therapist is somehow uniquely in this position.
Well, let me get some backup from some people that can maybe look at.
Mr. Chairman, Bruce Keeney, representing the Virginia Academy of Clinical Psychologists. A lot of people forget that the law dealing with driver's license has reporting if it's physical or mental impairment. Okay, it should. I think you talked to Tom about it. Should be not just psychologists, but it should be clinical psychologists. The reason why they are is they're the only one with an internship, other than psychiatrists, an internship and residency at the doctoral level degree program that are in a situation because people don't like to have their driver's license affected. Very rare, but they're the ones that are going. We're not talking about somebody that's not paying attention. We're talking about a diagnosable mental impairment. Bad example may be schizophrenia. Okay. And the law already includes and specifically says a mental impairment. That's the reason for it. Okay.
Senator Black.
Is there been some thought given to whether, you have people who, perhaps some of the elderly people who need medical attention for some reason or whatever, that perhaps there's going to be some apprehension on their part that, they'll go getting assistance and the next thing their means of getting around and taking care of themselves is taken away by the very person that they go to seek assistance from.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Black, I think that's probably always a concern, and I will share with you as a clinician that patients often do withhold information, but what is made available to the practitioners should be actionable to protect everybody in the Commonwealth from something that might be dangerous driving.
Thanks, Senator Black. Yes, Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Donovan. I think one of my concerns that I have, unintended consequences could be people who maybe would not go to their doctor for fear of being reported. And, I certainly want to avoid any kind of situation where we feel like a big brother is kind of looking over our shoulder and want to encourage people who need help to go to their doctor without fear of somehow being reported. And I just wondered, my concern is that this would seem somewhat intrusive and prevent people from seeking medical help.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Chase, I think that this does not require reporting. It just provides immunity should reporting be made. But in addition to that, I think that patients often do withhold relevant information from their physicians, and I don't think that will change as a result of this bill. And if it does, it's not going to substantially affect what is already withheld in conversation. But when it is available, if it's actionable, the clinician should be protected because they're acting in good faith in the best interest of the larger population.
Chase, is that complete?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just one last follow-up and point of clarification. So this basically is protecting the clinician. It has nothing to do, it's already the law, the actual reporting of the impairment or activity, that's already the law. This is just to protect
Senator Chase, there's not an additional law about commanding them to report. It is not required. This isn't just in unity, should they report. And Mr. Chairman, if we could add to the amendment clinical psychologist.
Okay, so Senator Suderline, before we go, let's, Senator Donovan would like to add clinical to the substitute, and we'll wrap it all up together. Tom, could you report what that amendment would be?
Yes, sir. On the substitute, you all adopted on line 508 after amendment 6, insert clinical.
Okay, is there a motion and a second that the amendment go into the substitute? All those in favor say aye. Those no, and that is complete. Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was curious, how often do we provide these, does the code provide these immunities? Things that would, if there wasn't a specific code section, would they be, violations of physician, patient privilege? Where else does this appear in the code?
Okay. So the question is, how often does this type of thing appear in the code? So the Senator Suderline would like for some.
I would have to defer to the code experts on that, not having it all committed to memory.
Senator Carrico, maybe comment.
Just maybe a comment. I don't know. I know in code that if you're involved in an accident or if you are stopped, that law enforcement has reason to believe that you have a medical situation, they're reported to the MDD and they suspend the license until a doctor's report can clarify as to whether you're able to operate a motor vehicle safely. I don't know that stands at this point for a clinical doctor or anyone to report at the DMV unless this bill passes.
Thank you, Senator Carrico. Let me have Tom, why don't you tell us kind of where you are on Senator Suderline's question, and then we'll go back to you.
Senator Suderline, Mr. Chair, I can certainly do some more research. Just off the top of my head, I know we have some mandatory reporting as far as reporting of abuse and that sort of thing. Beyond that, I have to do more research.
Mr. Chair, I recall the mandatory reporting that included physicians and all those are the people that would usually be in privileged communications. I'm just curious, are there other places, and I'm not interested in the number of times we do it so much as, are there other examples where what you would tell your physician otherwise is now something that they can report and is no longer protected? And I'm curious that I don't think that many regimes are aware of the current statute that's been on the books since the 80s. And I'm just getting pause about expanding the statute. We always talk about, the things you tell your pastor, the things you tell your attorney, the things you tell your doctor. Those are between the two of you. And that's why I'm concerned. I wasn't familiar with the 88 statute until reviewing this legislation.
If I could just clarify, and I can get some expert help here too, but this is really protecting these practitioners from violating any HIPAA law by revealing the names. This is not addressing all immunity and it's not addressing all medical reporting. It's a very specific portion of immunity that we're talking about. Cal, did you want to clarify that? Is that accurate? So it is not talking about the whole scope of reporting and patient-physician relationship or anything like that. This is really just providing immunity for them under HIPAA law.
Are there other questions to take? Okay. Are there those who are here to speak either in favor of the bill or in opposition to the bill? Are you in favor and/or in opposition?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Cal Whitehead, Virginia Society of Eye Physicians and Surgeons, and we do support the bill and thankful to Senator Donovan for bringing it for your consideration. We do look at this as a simple change that does two things. One, expands the categories of those professions that can make the report when they deem that a driver might be a concern to public safety or to themselves, and then also clarifying the immunity and having it narrowed to just HIPAA and the patient practitioner privilege, which was already in the existing law. So to echo what Senator said, it's not a vast expansion. I probably characterize it as a narrowing, more specificity. Thanks.
Yes, Senator Carrico. Just one more comment, maybe Cal can answer this question. Currently in the code, we have avenues for the doctors to be able to report this. Give an example, if you have a father who has onset of Alzheimer's, the family member can report that to the DMV that releases the doctor to give that ability to notify the DMV that they can't drive. Basically, incidents, there's avenues through law enforcement, through family members right now. So you're expanding the scope of that with this bill, giving the doctor the direct ability to contact DMV and have those requirements put in place, right?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Carrico, no, sir, I don't believe that this alters that. Anything about that the physician can make that report should they believe that that person is incapable of safely operating a vehicle. I don't think that would be different should this bill be passed.
So they can do it every day, is what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Currently, a physician is required to make that report. This would expand the categories of the professionals, but it would not change the fact that a medical professional was able to do it before.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Chase.
I think this would be for Powell, Senator. I was just curious, do we have the statistics and the numbers that would show how many physicians are being sued by someone that was reported? Is this a problem that we've had, or is it an anticipation of a problem?
That's a good question, Senator and Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The impetus for the bill was that as we were exploring safe driving and as it is related to accidents that were occurring on the road, we were hearing from folks in our professional circles that there was some concern that there was a lack of clarity on the protection here. And so that's why we brought the idea to Senator Donovan. The other professional groups sought to be added because they felt like they were in positions that they might see patients that were a danger to themselves or others on the road. So it's not looking for a problem that might happen in the future. It was really an attempt to provide some clarity and encourage reporting when a professional thinks it's necessary.
So just to clarify, do we have a number though on how many practitioners have been sued?
So, Mr. Chairman and Senator Chase, doctors already have immunity under the code as it currently exists, so they wouldn't be sued for that because they have immunity. The point is that when a nurse practitioner or somebody else is seeing the patient, they may choose not to report, and we may be missing reports that would be essential in helping us protect other drivers. So the idea is to expand the scope. So it's not predicated on a number of suits. It's predicated on a level of protection that would make people feel comfortable reporting.
Okay, very good. Others that are here speaking in favor of the bill, and if not, those in opposition to the bill, welcome. Please identify yourself and share with us your thoughts.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name is Jennifer Spangler. I'm a member of the public at large. I have a mental health challenge that basically if I decided to get behind the wheel, I could have some impairments that would impair my driving. I would definitely oppose expanding practitioners that can get in touch with the DMV because in 2002 I was in an automobile accident and I was concerned that my license was up for renewal, and I was being honest. I was concerned that my dizziness would impair my driving. And so they obviously they took away my license. Now, the DMV did a medical investigation. They contacted my psychiatrist, they contacted my neurologist, and they also contacted my family practitioner. And my family practitioner was the one who referred me to the DMV. Now, I had seen that man once. So, you know, the annual checkup, he did not know me. And he reported to the DMV, and unfortunately, even though my, impairment, I was worried was related to neurology, they picked up on my mental health illness, and for 15 years, I was responsible for medically reporting that I was safe to drive as a person with a mental health challenge. And that was an extreme violation, especially when my psychiatrist that sits telling me regularly said that I was functioning on a healthy way. So, thank you.
We're great we came. Thank you for sharing with us. Are there others here who speak in opposition to the bill? Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Move to report as amended.
There's a motion and a second that the bill be reported as amended. Clerk, call the roll.
Senator Sasslaw. Senator Lucas. Aye. Senator Howell. Aye. Senator Lott. Senator Barker.
Aye.
Senator Black. No. Senator Carrico.
No.
Senator Peterson.
No.
Senator Cosgrove.
No.
Senator Lewis.
Aye.
Senator Donovan.
Aye.
Senator Chase.
No.
Senator Suderline.
Abstain.
Senator Peake.
Yes.
Senator Newman.
Aye.
9 yeas, 5 nays.
The bill is reported as amended. Senator, thank you very much. You have some more bills, but I thought we maybe pause now and allow the secretary to share with us for the time that we'll come back to bills. But for everyone in the room, and you need to know that as soon as the secretary is done with this portion, we'll be going back to bills, including the bills from Senator Cavola and others. So, Secretary, thank you for coming by. Thank you for sharing with us during the last session regarding the opioid issue, and thank you for being willing to present to us on mental health. I know that in our previous discussions, we talked about 45 minutes. I think you're closer to 30, and if you can't make it quite there, we'll work with you.
We will do our best this morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I've asked Dr. Barber to speak quickly. Not at Newhouse to speak, but quickly. When the slides are up, he's getting them. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to do a little bit of level setting. There are a number of bills related to our behavioral health system. Clearly, that's of great interest in this session. Excuse me. And what I would like to ask you to do is to consider these in light of a vision for something that goes forward. So often we have bills that are looking at a particular piece of the problem, whether it's a jail-related bill or a PDO-related bill or a budget item for this or that. But the real issue is the big picture over time, what we want the system to be. And we tend to lose that in the process. So I thank you for giving us the opportunity to address it. So the slides won't match what we agreed we were going to say. That's what you're about to hear. But we'll get close to it. First thing, while we're waiting, is just to point out that there's been a lot of good work done over the last several years. The Deeds Commission, which many of you participate on, has laid out a series of thoughts about what the system should look like.
And the department has addressed Staff Virginia.
Mr. Secretary, we're delighted to hear that you by some chance need more time. We don't, we're able to extend if necessary. So I think we got it now.
Yeah. Put on a slide show and we'll go. So, thank you. So the first thing I wanted to do was to introduce you to the concept of a clutch. If you don't know, a clutch is actually a real term, but it's an illustrated collection of parts assembled to fulfill a particular purpose. And what I'd like to point out is we have created a bit of a clutch ourselves here in our mental health system right now. We have a bunch of pieces that don't go together, and they need to be aligned with common goals, common standards, and even perhaps common treatments across the different parts of the system. When an individual is in the community and receives a medication, or needs one, they should be able to get one. When they go to jail, it needs to be in the same place. They get referred to a state hospital, we use a similar formulary. And these are types of things we have to think about how we implement, and piecemeal legislating without vision is not getting us there. The cost of mental health is obviously extraordinary, and mental health issues contribute to the physical health costs that we deal with as we try to address the problem. And so the question comes up, and these slides are borrowed from Dr. Ben Miller at the University of Colorado Medical School. And the question is can we create a mental health system where there is no wrong door? Every point of entry gets you to what is needed. So much of mental health is in the public sector, but a lot of it is private sector as well. And then we have the roles of the community services boards, we have the roles of Medicaid, we have the large mental health service providers, jails for friends in the jails, and we have the private sector. So all of this somehow has got to be figured out. And today what we're realizing, and we think about it, is mental health problem goes to an emergency room, we get a PDO, they go to the mental health system. We have children in schools, go to the mental health system. Police, fire, and rescue, mental health system. The judicial system, the jails, it all goes to the mental health system. And what that's left us with right now is appropriate. If people have mental health issues, that they get treatment. But our challenge is that these systems are not working smoothly together, they're not aligned, and the differences in them lead to a fragmented piece of care. One of the issues, and I think you've seen these numbers before, is that we spend a lot on institutional care in Virginia. 46% of our budget in HHR goes to institutions. The national average is about 23%. And that means that the community spending, which is so badly needed, what might have helped Michael Mitchell stay out of jail, is just not there. We spend about $1.3 billion in the Secretariat on mental health services. This is including local spending. About $862 million of this is general fund spending. And so what I'd like to do here is to kind of introduce you to some of the pieces of the system and where we think we're going and where we need to go with them. Dr. Bartlett?
So, as Dr. Hazel referenced, we call it a system, but it's really a system of pieces. Our CSBs vary in size, geography, local priorities. Half the people served in the CSBs do not have insurance. The state hospitals are a no-cost option for CSBs, for jails, and for adults for Medicaid. And we have disparities just as we see in the rest of healthcare that Dr. Levine has talked about. Since 2013, considerable increase in the pressure on our state hospitals, 54% increase in the number of admissions. The utilization today is about 93%. Day after day, SAFE is about 85%. At the same time, we have more admissions. We also have more than 200 individuals who are ready for discharge all the time. It's about 15 or 16% of our beds are occupied by people predominantly who need community placement, able to meet their needs. In children's behavioral health services, with the Children's Academy and others. We're trying to integrate this, but children are obviously affected by many agencies, social determinants, and so on. And we need to assure that they have the same access as so forth. Too bad for you all to hand it to me. So one of the things that we've been looking at over the past year is what a consistent community system would involve. We think we need to aim at building a particular system of services that are accessible across the state, not just locality by locality, that have a common set of standards and metrics. And here are some of the services: same-day access, which is a budget item from the governor for this year, which is before you all. Outpatient services that includes MAT, which is medication-assisted treatment for opiate addiction, also in the governor's budget, and then other things: primary care integration, which is so important for the medical status of people with behavioral health disorders, detox, care coordination, psychosocial rehab, and so forth. But the idea is that we have access to these services everywhere by whatever arrangement works best for the locality. Same-day access means that if an individual calls or appears at one of the service boards, that they are assessed that day, as opposed to waiting, getting an appointment 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe the next day in some cases. We're trying to shift our system away from a crisis-oriented system. Some of you have heard me say, it's when people are in crisis, that's when the risk is highest, and we need to move our services and supports away from crisis and onto ongoing care. Same-day access requires a change in the way the service boards conduct their business, how they do their medical records, how they do their scheduling, how they use their staff, and focus them more on some short-term treatments. We think it's the place to start. It virtually eliminates no-show appointments. It increases the follow-up of people. They're more likely to show up the second and third time. Reduces the wait time. We think this is the place to start with building our community system. One of our boards is well into this, and they are seeing all the results that are being seen nationally. The governor's budget, as I mentioned, same-day access for 25 of the 40 CSBs, which is a measured pace. We can't do it all at once. Medication-assisted treatment for 1,000 or so individuals, and then $200,000 to provide the Loxone along with the training to help save lives of people who overdose.
I would like to point out, we had a slide this morning that indicates that we did put $9.5 million in the budget for mental health services. Some go to the facilities to stabilize our turnover and our staff attrition that we're having as our numbers and the behavioral issues that our patients are having have increased. We also have put in of that $7.4 million for community services. The only way to create the capacity is to have these 200 people who are ready to go home be able to go home, and that requires community services. I'd like for Cindy Jones to come up for a moment and tell you where Medicaid is going, because these two parts have to fit together as we think about our system.
Good morning. I put this slide up here because I think as people visit you, they mention all kinds of services, and it probably gets confusing trying to figure out who's talking about what. But the reason they're in two columns, traditional services and non-traditional services, is Medicaid pays for traditional services like you and I would get from Anthem or whoever our commercial carrier is. The non-traditional services, commercial carriers don't typically pay. This is what the Medicaid and general funds pays for. These are things that keep people in the community. And I think it's important to know that as Dr. Hazel said, $700 million are spent on non-traditional services every year in the Medicaid program. And then because they also have medical issues, over $1 billion are spent on those particular recipients. What's exciting is last year you all paid for substance use services to starting the Medicaid program. So on the non-traditional services side, we're adding peer supports, which has been found to be one of the most effective services you can do to get people recovery for opiate treatment and other substance use. On the traditional side, it gave us money to treat more people on Medicaid and increase the reimbursement and increase the services. And it's the first time as we're presenting across the Commonwealth that people are clapping. And so many thanks to you. That starts in April 2017. And it's actually having the effect that the commercial carriers and the hospitals are looking at this carefully in terms of expanding their services. Whoops, I went too far. What I wanted to tell you is, based on your direction, and especially more recently the Merck, is you have asked us to move everything into managed care and to fully integrate acute care, behavioral health, and long-term care. And currently, we are trying to, you can't do it overnight, so what we're doing right now is we've got up at the top, we've got a behavioral health service administrator that are overseeing those non-traditional services. We have managed care for children and pregnant women that deal with the traditional behavioral health. And one of the first places that we've been fully able to integrate it is the managed care called Commonwealth Coordinated Care, which is a demonstration grant for dual eligibles, Medicare and Medicaid. And so we've been very successful in making sure that people get all their care needs. Because behavioral health should not always can't be thought of as separately. It's part of health. The future Medicaid delivery system, by August of 2018, traditional and non-traditional, medical and long-term care will be all under managed care. There are two separate programs. One called Medallion Forward, the green, is for children and pregnant women. And the one below it is expansion of our dual program for all seniors and all individuals with disabilities. Those two populations are radically different in terms of how you provide services to them, who the service providers are, and that's set to go this July. So I do caution you, we've laid the groundwork for getting to where you want us to be, which will allow us to make sure that people get integrated behavioral health care as well as bend the cost curve. And any changes to these the house of cards will just fall down. And so we've laid a pretty good framework. This is just an example of a behavioral health home that we've been able to do in our current Commonwealth Coordinated Care program with duals. We were able to work with the plans and the CSPs and negotiated measures. So we are doing measures and trying to make sure that clients see doctors as well as get follow-up. We're also doing that in our Medallion 3 program, where we're taking care of children and pregnant women and some disabled adults. I guess the best measure here is that 100% of our members that went into the hospital got follow-up after hospitalization. We also worked with you to create the Governor's Access Plan for seriously mentally ill. These are the people that Jack was just talking about with his STEP Virginia. They're uninsured or are underinsured, and we were able to provide them a limited benefit package just to our most serious mentally ill Virginians. And we started that in 2015. And the whole goal of this was to give them some services until we could give them the full gamut of services. We've served over 12,000 people, and it's interesting, 2/3 of these people have diabetic symptoms. So it just really underscores how important you can't look at just behavioral health. You have to look at medical and behavioral together. So the Medicaid program is a $9 billion program, and 1 million people. A lot of people have behavioral health needs, and so we've laid the groundwork. That will allow us to work with Jack Barber and his Step Virginia plan to make sure that we're all on the same page, we're using the same metrics. And when we talk about community mental health, remember that 80% of those services are actually provided by private providers. So, you know, we have to make sure that they're all under the same system in the same direction.
Apologize for the slides. The updated deck, and that's what we were going to say, didn't quite make it, but obviously the jail piece is tremendously important, and you will see in your list you have a number of bills related to jail mental health and oversight. Please don't look at those as one-offs from the rest of the system. However we decide to manage it, we do need to recognize that the individuals are in jails for just a period of time, and it has to connect to the community, and it has to connect to the CSPs, to the state hospitals, and so forth. We have a number of pilot projects, 6 of them right now, that money is going out to assist the jails in terms of improving their behavioral health. 10 CSPs have jail diversion programs. There are 3 courts with mental health dockets that we're aware of, and there was $4.2 million put in the governor's budget to assist with jail screening and assessment. We have a Center for Behavioral Health and Justice where behavioral health is meeting with sheriffs and members from law enforcement and judiciary, and one of the key items is to have a unified or consistent screening for individuals coming in to the system so that problems can be identified in advance and hopefully addressed in a timely fashion. Now, I want to jump ahead. SJ 47, or the Deeds Commission, did create a number of recommendations. And the first is to expand the CSP mandated services, and that is essentially to endorse what the department calls the Step Virginia plan, so that the services that Dr. Barber just outlined for you. And additionally, there are a number of other recommendations, and I do congratulate the commission for actually moving ahead and getting recommendations out, and we have, I think, enjoyed a very good working relationship with them. The reason for highlighting this is we go forward, we collectively, and you collectively, because the administration will change in a year, are going to need some sort of a vision of what you want to have. And a vision or a sketch of a building is not the same as a set of plans to build the building and to connect it to utilities and to ensure that people can get in and out of it. The GAB, the new one, will cost $300 million, and you're going to spend $18 million of that on architecture, not to mention construction management, et cetera. As we look at a system that just in one piece spends $1.3 billion a year, we have to have some time and attention to creating a vision of what we want, a system that is comprehensive, it's integrated where it needs to be with physical care, where the referrals flow, the information flows, and the incentives are aligned. Dr. Barber talks about the state hospital problem. When someone comes to the hospital, the state hospital, we pay for that. When you need to have alignment in the incentives so that people can receive the funds and save the funds by keeping people in the community when appropriate, that is not part of our thinking today. These are strategies that have to be worked out. So to get away from the system of pieces, the governor has put in some money for planning. And I know that that's controversial. I've already seen some of the House amendments, and I think they spent it 5 or 6 different ways that Senator Howell has spent it. But the point being here is that we cannot ignore the need for a strategy and an implementation plan. A vision without implementation doesn't get us anywhere. Is this the best way to do it? Maybe not. Maybe you all have a better way, but I do think we have to have some time and attention, and the Deeds Commission will need some help going from visioning to implementation. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I hope we've provided a bit of an overview for you of where we are and what's going on. That will help inform your discussion on the number of bills that you have to deal with, just pieces of this. Thank you.
Secretary, thank you for the presentation, and there will be some questions if you're willing to take some questions. Senator Black.
Thank you for your attention to this, Mr. Secretary. I have great confidence in what you're doing. The federal Medicaid money does not, is it true that it does not fund institutionalized mental health care?
Let me get one of the experts. Cindy and Jack, you want to help with this?
So, Medicaid does not pay for adults in institutions larger than 16 beds. We're going to get a waiver for some substance use disorder services. It does pay for geriatrics and for children, but not for adults, which is the biggest part of our business.
Sort of running through the history of deinstitutionalization, it seems that what happened is we got very concerned about institutionalized mental health care, and we said scoot them out, and they ended up freezing on sidewalks and things like that, and in jails, which we've seen, and obviously not at all the fault of the state of Virginia, but I wonder whether, and I know this is sort of above all of our pay grade to some extent, but I wonder whether a change in Medicaid that would provide financing for institutionalized care would relieve the pressure on the jails, relieve some of the pressure on the communities and so forth for some of these severe chronic situations with mental health care.
So the first thing is just the deinstitutionalization part. One of the things that's great about Virginia is the state hospitals are not allowed to discharge people to the streets, with rare exceptions. People have to be released to a permanent address. So there are very few people even who go back to shelters and that sort of thing. So we're on that. In fact, that's one of the reasons we have 200 people who are ready to go and can't leave. There's no question, but what if Medicaid were to pay for more things, it would allow more services for more people and not stretch our general funds as far.
So what Jack meant to say is I think a couple things, Senator. What has happened over time? First of all, I don't believe we actually closed the state mental hospital. But what has happened is the practice has changed in terms of the availability of treatment at a community level. And I think that philosophically, while you are absolutely correct, and that's one way of looking at it, another way of looking at it is that many people who used to be institutionalized didn't need to be, and the failure was not the change in transitioning to outpatient care. For instance, I will tell you that when I started practicing sort of training in surgery at Mayo Clinic and selected knee replacement, they were in 16 days. When I was at Duke as a medical student, you spent 3 days in the intensive heart intensive care unit after heart surgery. Now, there are people doing knee replacements as outpatients. But you have to have the funding in place, and the resources in place, and the coordination in place to take advantage of those things. The advantage of a community setting, and let's think about somebody who might have diabetes that comes in with their blood sugars out of control, and they come to the emergency room, they get stabilized, they spend a few days in the hospital, everything's under control. If we send them back to where they were in that same environment without being able to address the environment, you know what happens? They come back. And these are your frequent flyers, a very big source of really human tragedy and cost to the public. And we are mandated to do that by EMTALA, which I think President Reagan signed in the 80s. So just so you know, that was an unfunded mandate to work under. So the fun with mental health is the same thing in a way, is that if you are apart from your environment and you can't work on the whole thing, your likelihood of success diminishes.
I do appreciate the work that you do, and I recognize that in many ways Virginia does a much better job than other states, and I do appreciate all the efforts that you put into it.
Senator Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In partial response to Senator Black's question and comment, one of the recommendations of the Deeds Commission, it was unfortunately not in the governor's budget, was $10 million for permanent supportive housing. We know Deeds Commission, that kind of supportive housing, permanent supportive housing, has a tremendous impact on jailing. People don't go to jail they go less than half as often, and on emergency room admissions, which is also extremely costly. I think that as we move forward, and I know this isn't the Finance Committee, but nonetheless, I think we need to be very aware of this best practice that's in the rest of the country, much more so than in Virginia, as one way we can alleviate several problems at once.
May I respond, Mr. Chairman, for the senators who have not heard, we were up at the Capitol last week, and when we talked about the potential changes in Washington and potential block granting for Medicaid, what I advised them is that if you give us all the responsibilities but without the tools, we can't actually make things better, less expensive, more efficient. And the example that I gave specifically was related to housing. Housing comes from a different secretariat, which is HUD, and if you want us to help reduce the burden on the taxpayers and provide better care for individuals with some physical illness, people coming out of jail, behavioral issues, substance abuse, there needs to be a safe, stable place to stay. And the inability to integrate that stability with the medical and mental health care creates a dynamic in which people just turn through the system. And so we have to think more broadly about what happens if we're going to get to the health care. And when people talk about these things, it's not everyone likes the term, but social determinants of health, and I would submit to you they're really the social determinants of life. And if we can't just pay at the high end. We have to find a way to invest earlier and interrupt the pipeline and solve some of the term.
Senator Chase, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hazel, good to see you. Appreciate your report. I just had a quick question about entry into the system and whether veterans or those veterans who are retiring were included in these numbers, or is that a totally separate report?
We don't have anything that's paid for through the Veterans Administration is not part of these numbers. So if an individual is eligible for Medicaid, then they would be considered. Some veterans, you qualify for the VA based on a series of criteria, which I'm not expert on, but such as having been injured or having war-related injury, things like that. So not every veteran qualifies. Those who do not, unfortunately, are some of the folks that we are, even some who do qualify, people that we've addressed through the Veterans Homelessness Reduction Program that Admiral Harvey and the VBS group have worked on. We have had meetings between the JLR staff and behavioral health and VBS around improving the mental health system for veterans, and I think that they had some recommendations out of VBS this year related to that.
Very good. If there are no other questions, Secretary, thank you for your time. Thank you for the level set, as you say, and we appreciate it, and we'll be calling on you as we need to both down here and upstairs.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, with that, we're going to go back to the non-member. Senator Hanger, I think you have two bills before us. If you'd like to present your bills at this time, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And actually, the timing is good with the presentation that you just received from the Secretary, Ms. Jones, and from Behavioral Health. I've been a member of the Mental Health Commission, chaired by Senator Deeds, for several years, and there are some members of your committee here that are also members. And we made a number of recommendations, Mr. Chairman. I'd have to say that there's been a good work ethic. The stars have kind of aligned, I guess, with the work of what's been done, and it's been our hope, and certainly what we strive to have a fairly aggressive package of legislation to present to this General Assembly. Senator Deeds and I have been our chief co-patron on a number of measures, and I had the opportunity to chair one of the subcommittees which dealt with the structure of our mental health delivery system and the funding sources. So with that, I have two bills to present to you today. The first one deals with the structure, which was in part described by Secretary Hazel. Senate Bill 1005 is that, where we're dealing basically with a recommendation of the commission that we provide standard core services statewide. And there are essentially 10 that we recommended that would be core services that would be available uniformly throughout the system statewide. In doing that, putting the cost estimates to our endeavors, we found that we really weren't able in a position to be able to afford, and we've been overly aggressive to try to bring all 10 of these online at the same time. So the bill that you have in front of you basically captures all 10 of those, but it has an enactment clause which would essentially require that the first emergency services, which we already require statewide, but then same-day access to mental health screening and timely access to assessment, diagnostic, and treatment services, that would be a part of core services effective July 1, 2018, as well as outpatient primary care screening and monitoring services. The other 8 that we're recommending that are included in Senate Bill 1005 would have an enactment clause that would essentially require that they be online by July 1st of 2021. I do have some rough cost estimates. Most of and we have been working closely with the administration on these initiatives, so some of our work was being carried on by the administration and vice versa. So the costs, the basic money for these first part of the enactment was included in the governor's budget, but we will still have to take a look at it. It could be your pleasure in the finance committee to make sure we're lining up the numbers. There are other issues, obviously. Senator Howe still concerned in the broad picture of not having funds, as well as Senator Barker's working on that for permanent supportive housing. But we do feel like we have basically the money and the commitment to include adequate funding to accomplish this. So that's just a thumbnail sketch that I'd be glad to respond to any questions that you might have, Mr. Chairman.
Are there others here to speak in favor of the bill? Hear from a couple of those that are supporting them, then we'll review support the bill. I think it does need to go upstairs. So welcome, and you introduce yourself and share with us your support.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. I'm Charles Summers, the Presbyterian minister, a member of the Presbyterian James Public Policy Working Group. We stand to support this as an enactment of the Golden Rule to love our neighbors and ourselves.
Thanks for coming today. Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
I'm Linda Higgins. I am the pastor of St. John's UCC, the United Church of Christ Church here in Richmond, as well as a member of the Virginia Interfaith Policy Center, and I stand in support of this bill because we believe in the care of one another.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman and committee. I'm Kim Bobo. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We consider this one of our highest policy priorities, and we appreciate the leadership of the committee on this. Thank you.
Senator Hager, anybody else here to speak in favor of the bill?
I expect it could. There is actually a broad coalition, as you would expect, that's been working on this, including the CSDs themselves and a lot of the providers that have been a part of the development of this. And so, back to your agenda.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Beeson. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Community Services Boards. And want to applaud the work of the SJ 47 subcommittee and Senator Hager and his leadership in supporting the elements that you see in the bill in front of you. We are very much supportive of the Step Virginia model, which is essentially what's laid out in this bill. We are happy that it's going to go up to finance because without the language in there that says to the extent that the money is provided, we would be facing to have the unfunded mandate. So thrilled about the direction that this is taking, and again, very grateful for the leadership.
Thank you. Are there those that have some concerns about the bill? Seeing none,
Yes, we have one more, and there are, I think, several more in the process that we will be bringing, but today, Senate Bill 1006, and there should be a substitute for this. Do we have a substitute here? Is it, I would ask the staff if the substitute that's proposed by the Supreme Court has already been rolled into this? Mr. Chairman, this one is dealing with sharing of information. Mr. Chairman, there had, after the bill had been dropped, in communicating with representatives of the Supreme Court, they had some language that they had shared that wasn't incorporated in this, that was just basically cleaning up to their satisfaction. Apparently, we give a copy of what it was, but we don't have it prepared for you right now. So I don't know what your need would want.
Just wonder aloud, is most of it technical, or is it substantive that needs to be?
Substantively, I'm sorry, Christy Wright, Office of the Executive Secretary. Substantively, it does the same thing, although it does, I have the House version. Sarah Stanton had worked on it, and it places some protections, some FOIA protections under the FOIA Act, and it actually puts it in a different statute. Right now, the way it's structured, it actually has the courts providing this information, and it's too broad.
Okay, so if you don't mind, Senator Hanger, we have maybe one or two bills that we could pick up if you guys want to work this out. I'd rather do that than bring you back down another day.
Topics for the members.
So if we could just have it go by temporarily without objection. Tom, what do you think with a temporary, we can work this out?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, we'll do that.
Without objection, the bill will go by temporarily. Okay. Next up, Senator Barker, I think you have a bill that you'd like to take 1015. And while that is occurring, okay, well, you can start there, right? You can start there, maybe. And while that's occurring, there is a request from the patron on Senate Bill 1028 that the bill be stricken. And without objection, Senate Bill 1028 will be stricken. Okay. Senator Barker, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Do you want these in any particular order, or?
Not really.
Okay. Well, let me start with Senate Bill 1221, because that picks up on the Deeds Commission recommendations. This is one of those issues that came out of the those recommendations came out of the Deeds Commission. And pretty much everybody's familiar. One of the issues we've been dealing with as it relates to the mental health system and the temporary detention orders and those types of things has been the transport of those individuals who are being temporarily detained, generally by law enforcement, sheriff's departments, offices, those types of things, and in many instances having long trips, particularly from some of the rural parts of the Commonwealth, to get to the facilities where the individual is being evaluated. They then have to turn around, go back to where they were, and a couple of days later come back and pick up the individual, bring him back for commitment hearing before release back into the community. This has stressed out many of the local law enforcement officers with this transportation issue. So there was a pilot program that was set up, and Senator Carrico, Senator from Grayson, has been very strong advocate on this issue. There was a pilot program set up in the Rogers area to try to have an alternative way to do this that relied less frequently on the law enforcement officers, particularly when someone was not did not appear to be a violent person.